You can.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Super League. As I just assured the chat, I'm here with David Ochoa and we did not coordinate our outfits, but here we are.
Well, great minds think alike, etc.
Great minds do think alike. We also apparently thought alike, though we'll see if we can win alike. You actually are already up a match. You played against Kai, who, as I actually just told you, had main deck Energy Flux in his in his blue-white deck.
Yeah, Enlightened Tutor can produce a nice little deck list here and there. I seem to remember way back to Grand Prix Chicago with Nassif's deck. Remember with the internal Enlightened Tutor sideboard for the Legacy tournament? I think he was trying to go for 15 one-ups and had a bunch of Enlightened Tutors and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Nassif actually won that GP with 15 one-ups in his sideboard. Kai had a lot of one-ups in his main deck, including hits like Stony Silence. He drew a moat at one point in the match, so that could have been difficult.
I mean, I had a few hangerbacks. I had Triskelion. I could have gotten around it, maybe. But,
yeah, you certainly have some outs, and you chose to bring kind of the same workshop deck, or a very similar workshop deck, as you played in the play-in last week.
Yeah, this was the deck that I actually wanted to submit. The list that I ended up playing was short a few sphere resistances that I thought I had already included, but they weren't actually on the list. So when I thought, oh wow, there's room for metalworkers also, that's awesome. At the cost of my spheres, as I found out later, I thought, oh, well, I guess we'll just roll with it, and here we are, so it worked out.
That was the equivalent of your missing tendrils here.
We can love that.
Look, everyone just thought, all the commentators, when we were talking about your deck, we just thought you were greedy. You were like, oh, I just won't play against Storm. But it worked out. I mean, Metalworker is better against other shop decks, and I think that ended up being fine. So even though we noted that you only activated Metalwork, I think once in the whole tournament.
Yeah, but that was partly in thanks to what my opponents had to do to stop it. Had I actually activated it, then I would have won those games a lot more easily. But making the other shop's player have to use like a Phyrexian Revoker on a Metalworker, or have to have Trike in the instance of another game, is it puts them in a tough spot where they have this Revoker that's not named an Arcbound Ravager or Triskelion, so that'll end up sort of unfolding poorly for them as the game goes on.
Yeah, and the Triskelion Ravager gives you like a fireball combo kill. It's kind of like a Disciple of the Vault kill of sorts, where all your artifacts turn immediately into damage, which is a pretty awesome addition to the deck. It's always funny when vintage decks play these cards that aren't really seeing play in Standard or Modern. Like we've got our Triskelions, our Ingot Chords, our Dragonlord Dromokas running around.
And after this evening, Dragonlord Ojutai as Rich had.
Yeah. The last time I saw Seeker and Dragonlord Ojutai in play, they were not in Vintage. Let's just put it that way. I actually had both those cards in my deck at one of the Standard Pro Tours this year. So our next match up here, we've got Bob Maher against Tom Martell. We don't know what they're on yet, so we can't quite do pre-match in the sense that we don't know their list yet. Well, let's talk about what we predict them to be on. What would you guess Tom would be on?
Well, I thought this week that would be a good week to bring a linear decks like Dredge or some other combo deck like Storm. And as has been the case in the past, Tom has played Dredge, and he's also played a wide range of other decks. So I think I would put him on a slightly wider range than Bob. I mean, Bob will also play a fair number of decks. Like he had this sort of 4-color aggro deck with wizards, that sort of thing, with Dark Confidant and Deathrite Shaman and Dragon Predator and Snapcast Formation, that sort of stuff.
I think both Bob and Chris felt like they had to play their invitational card at least once, because they both have done so.
Look, they got the card for the reason, so yeah. I mean, they have to showcase it. But if I had to pick a deck for Bob, I would probably want to say Storm. And I think Tom would probably go with either the same thing, Dredge or Storm. Not one of the mid-range blue decks.
One of the things I've enjoyed about watching and playing in all the seasons of the VSL is that people's range has expanded. At first, you would see that people run in like maybe a one or two different kinds of decks. But as we've had more and more seasons and more decks submitted, people start playing more things. Like I would not have put Rich on workshops till a couple months ago. I would not have put like Bob on playing everything. He's actually played like workshops. He's played Doomsday. He's played Carevex Torch Crucible combo. You said like you said he played the Trigon Predator deck. So at this point, I think everyone has played all sorts of different archetypes, which is awesome. It makes metagaming harder, but it does make viewing a lot better. So
Yeah, that's certainly going to be the case.
it sounds like they're ready to go. So let's head down to the match.
All right, let's get some games.
All right, we've got Mentor Control against Tezzerator. Ooh, and Bob's got Thoughtcast in his opening hand. So that speaks to me like there's a Seat of the Synod waiting in there, which I really do like that deck. I've played that deck before. I hate how bad it is against Stony Silence and Nora. You could just never beat those cards.
Yeah, hopefully 4 Seat of the Synod. And as I said earlier about mid-range blue decks, here both of them showed up with one of those. I suspect that Bob is going to have a lot of card drawing spells, which is going to make it difficult for Tom to keep up if he ends up falling behind without being able to draw into gushes and stuff.
Yeah, one of the advantages that Bob's going to have is Tom has cards like Swords to Plowshares in his deck, which, I mean, we don't know Bob's list. Maybe he's got Dark Confidence, but in general, I would assume Swords to Plowshares is not a very good card against a Vault Key Thoughtcast deck. So I think that Bob is going to have more card draw and more card selection. Sensei's Top was a great draw, too, but Tom gets to use that mental misstep and just stop Bob from building up Thoughtcast resources.
Yeah, and Jace is going to be a good way to help keep up with the card advantage that Bob has, just being able to rebuy stuff like Time Walk and Gush, and then get rid of all those dead cards like Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, Jace is awesome. I do like Jace in Vintage. I played a very similar Mentor deck to what Tom's playing, just from the cards I've seen. But one of the things that it hurts at is it's a little slow. Right? Tom played Jace and just passed the turn. But this is the matchup where you can afford that more than others. So I do like seeing Jace. It was a great draw for Tom. It might have been one of his best draws, aside from like an Ancestral Recall or something like that.
Yeah, outside of a restricted card, it's probably going to be one of the cards that he was hoping to draw the most. Now, what do you think, Bob?
Recall. I would guess Ancestral.
Walking into the misstep, maybe. Yeah.
The reason I could guess Ancestral is Bob doesn't have enough resources to go for like a Tinker. I don't think like that seems really risky, and Tom would have to have a second misstep, and you have a Force of Will backup. So I think this was going to work out fairly well for Bob. Though, this is why I actually cut Vampiric Tutor the last time I played a Thirst deck. Just tutoring for Ancestral is just not even great. Like, you built your own divination.
Yeah, I still like having Vamp, though, since you don't always have to go for Ancestral. You can go for other stuff. It's kind of the way I feel about Merchant Scroll is just, you don't always have to go for Ancestral. There's still stuff like Flusterstorm or Gush or other cards in this situation. I mean, Ancestral is just so alluring, though, because it's 3 cards for 1 mana.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it got a lot worse with Mental Misstep, but it's still pretty good. And, oh, wow, Bob's going to get to go off here. He's got actually some options. He can either go Tarn, Mox, Thirst, discard Seat, or he can go Seat, Mox, Thoughtcast for 2 mana, and then maybe try to draw a 1-drop.
I like going for Thoughtcast. The sooner you can make your Thoughtcast into Ancestral Recalls, the more you're going to get farther and farther ahead. Ooh.
Negate. There's a lot of cards getting played this week that have not seen a ton of Vintage play, which is pretty awesome. I love week 1's all exploratory. By the time it's week 4, it's just going to be Mono Dredge and workshop decks.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Strip Mine also. Looks like Tom's a little on the... no, actually, it's pretty close. He's got Jason Gush versus Thirst for Knowledge and Negate, so, we're going to... I believe see quite a few blues card draw spells just being thrown against each other.
I love these matchups. If I could just play these matchups all day, it would be awesome. Instead of people who don't want you to cast your spells, Ochoa. But
yeah, well, sometimes you just have to be the spoiler at the party.
So Tom, because he has Swords to Plowshares in his hand, which is not a card I really value, I would be kind of tempted just to Jace first and hope to just peel off a Mentor. You're not really looking to flip Jace this turn either way. You'd rather not flip it, actually. And I don't think you need to Gush to have extra cards to discard. Frequently you would Gush before looting, but right here I like it just because you get to discard the Swords to Plowshares already. You already know you have a bad card, so I kind of like seeing it just because the reward of drawing Mentor is pretty high.
Yeah, and it's unknown whether or not Swords to Plowshares is actually a good card at all, or how many of those types of cards he has in his decks. So he might want to just be able to loot multiple times. For example, if he has like 3 swords and like maybe a like an Ingeture, or if we're playing any of those main deck.
Yeah, looks like the good thing is Jace. Yeah, he is thinking. I mean, his decision here has to be whether he casts Gush before activating Jace, right? There's no other sequencing that really matters. Like, I can't imagine him strip mining first, right? Maybe he wants to play around a Flusterstorm, but that doesn't.
He could, if he wants to flip Jace. That's, I think, what the biggest decision that he's going through, because he can play strip mine, strip a land, Gush, then loot, and that will get 5 cards in his graveyard with the resolution of the loot.
Yeah, but that seems pretty aggressive. So yeah, Tom did Gush first, which I don't think changed the outcome very much here. Like, had he cast or used Jace first, he would have still ended up casting Gush.
And yeah. And it looks like he's probably just going to play strip mine, strip a land, and play a Ruby. Oh,
it looks like he's actually leaving up the Swords to Plowshares. One of the downsides to discarding Volcanic, by the way, is Tom can't use Jace on Gush anymore, because one of the things I learned is if you minus Jace, you can actually alternate cast Gush. It's not like a Snapcaster Mage. So, because it just lets you play the card from your graveyard. It doesn't give it literal flashback. So if Tom kept a land, he actually could have the option to do that.
Yeah, and also I don't like getting rid of the second island, because he might not draw one, and he kind of wants to flip Jace and then flashback Gush to sort of keep up with what Bob is doing. And Ruby isn't doing nearly as much.
He can sacrifice Lotus to hardcast Gush at this point, because he does have tons of mana, but I don't think the Ruby does a ton more than Volcanic at this point. Like, he's representing Force of Will, I guess, but Bob's still going to go for Thirst with Negate backup, which is, again, not something I see very often in Vintage. Oh yeah, Bob is doing it here. He gets to discard Seed of the Synod, play a land, have another Thirst up. Like, actually, it's kind of interesting here. Do you play the Lotus so you can have Thirst plus Negate up, even though it makes your Thirst discard worse? You probably do, right?
No, I would just hold on to the Lotus and then save it to discard a Thirst.
And then in that case, you probably aren't casting Thirst this turn. You're just waiting an extra turn, right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna chill out. I would wait an extra turn. Yeah. I don't know how pressured Bob feels, but
I can't imagine very. Like, if you look at what Tom is playing, if Tom didn't play anything with Lotus and hasn't cast anything else yet, there's just not that many cards you can put him on, right?
Yeah, I would put him on like maybe either like a land, some sort of disruption spell, and then maybe a draw spell. I mean, that's the average of what his deck is going to have in it. It's got the fewest number of creatures, and then everything else is like land, card draw, and then situational counters.
Yeah, Strip Mine very clearly not doing the job here. Bob has 9 mana in play. Right now, keeping the Ruby over Volcanic is hurting Tom, because now if he wants to cast a Gush, he's going to have to do it the hard way, which is sacking Lotus and tapping 2 mana.
Yeah, it's not the best use of his resources, and unfortunately, the Ruby is sort of making it so that his plan is going to be hurt a little bit.
He might actually discard Swords so he can keep Strip Mine, so he can coward cast Gush with Pyroblast backup, which is, again, not the most enticing prospect, but it might be where he's at.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I would get rid of that sword as quickly as possible, especially since you have Jace. So even if some creature comes into play that you feel pressured by, you can still minus it to flash it back, assuming your Jace stays around unmolested.
So Tom can also just wait here, and he doesn't have to do anything. The problem is Bob is getting a lot of value from his turns and his mana.
Yeah, so he's again like we said, he's just casting a bunch of card draw and spells, which Tom is going to be struggling to keep up with. Although it looks like they are neck and neck, and I think that Tom is a little bit ahead at the moment, just because he's got the Jace on the battlefield.
It's really going to depend what this Thirst draws into. Given Bob's hand and board, he's going to have to sack Lotus to negate the Pyroblast. So if Bob, I mean, Bob has so much mana that if he draws any powerful spell in his deck, he's in a really good position to use it.
Yeah,
if you're Tom, you could hardcast Gush here to look for a Force of Will, but that doesn't seem great. Oh, what about Vault Key? Oh wow, this is where it actually hurt Bob to wait here, or to go Thirst with by playing Lotus. He can either keep Vault Key or his other two cards. And, I mean, he can discard one of the pieces to keep a Scalding Tarn and a Mana Drain, but if he keeps Vault plus Key, and Tom mental missteps the Key, then Bob can all of a sudden have nothing.
Yeah, and this is sort of going back to where I wanted to keep the Lotus in the hand. It's just because if you found yourself in this kind of situation where you've got a bunch of gas in your hand and you want to keep all of it, Lotus is going to be the weakest card, and it looks like that's what ended up happening with Bob. But now I would just, if I'm Bob, then I don't know. I really want to discard Voltaic Key. Assuming he's got something like Tezzeret or stuff like that. It seems.
Given the deck's name Tezzerator, I assume that's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
See, the part of the problem is Tom hasn't had an opportunity to cast a Misstep for quite some time, so it's not unreasonable to think he might have it. So Bob needs to draw another piece of disruption here.
The Mox Opal, not what you wanted. And I like the sequencing by Bob, playing out
For sure.
the Voltaic Key first. Obviously, Tom's going to counter it.
You would think so? It just is too risky not to, I believe.
Yeah.
So Tom's actually doing okay now, despite not having a second island to Gush, kind of of his own design. I think he's actually doing fine.
Yeah, Tom seems like he's got a bit of breathing room now, so he's gonna be able to find another land or a spell that draws into a land.
And he found an Ancestral Recall, which is, I think, going to do the trick now, because Tom's going to get to Ancestral Jace Ancestral at the very least, and he's got like Brainstorm. Yeah, I really like Tom's spot now. I mean, it turns out drawing 9 cards does help you win.
Yes, and at this point, barring some sort of weird shenanigans where Tom just bricks on a bunch of draws, and then Bob has like Time Vault into a restricted card like Tinker or Academy, and then Tezzeret, then I think Tom pretty much has this game.
Basically, Bob's out is Tom not drawing the card Force of Will, because if Tom finds a single Force of Will, I think he can't lose. He's only going to give Bob a couple draw steps, because he can go like, if he wants, he can go land, mentor, and then cast Brainstorm and Mox Pearl. So he's good. Bob's going to have like one more draw step, I think. Assuming that the Gush kind of goes off next turn. So if Bob draws Yogg-Will and Tom hasn't found a Force of Will, Bob could conceivably win.
Tom has got to be worried about those last 2 cards in Bob's hand, and so he might actually play the Pearl first, so he can Brainstorm, place, and then have a fetch land to shuffle away, so that he can get some fresh cards off of that Gush.
Oh, he used up his blue mana and floated a red instead, which I assume is what he was trying to do.
Yeah, that's a little awkward.
All right, cue up the Skype chat. Nothing's being said yet, but there we go. So it looks like Tom has expressed his displeasure to our producer instead. All right, well, Bob has a shot. He can resolve a Jace now. Tom's gonna have to Brainstorm to look for Force of Will if he wants to counter it. Though, honestly, Jace won't do it by itself. The fact that Monster Mentor's in play means that Jace is on a short clock here.
Yeah, this Jace is gonna be fine, I think.
Looks like Tom might be spell piercing the Jace to just tap Bob out. Well, he's probably going to brainstorm, but he could spell pierce here, actually. I don't think it's fully unreasonable. If he's gushing, though, he's most likely going to cast brainstorm as well.
Yeah, I would suspect that. And so he's going to have plenty of bad cards to put back. And let's see. He's got that Jace still, so he's got...
Oh, yeah, Tom's bad card flooded, don't worry.
Oh, wow, yeah. So if he minuses on the Jace, he's got another Gush, he's got another Brainstorm. Does he have a...
He's going to have three... He's going to have 3 monks in play, so he needs to play 4 spells to kill Bob, which I don't think he's going to be able to play next turn unless his brainstorm hits fairly well.
Yeah.
And it actually didn't. Tom's hand is now all blanks for this turn, so if Bob brainstorms with Jace and finds like Lotus, or no, he already has the Lotus. So if Bob finds Yoggle, I think that's going to be good enough, right? He can go Mox. Keep 1 Mox. Mox Opal actually very good here. Yawgmoth will replay Mox, replay Lotus. He does have to deal with the mental misstep, which stops the key again, but there are definitely lines that Bob can do.
Oh, wow. This is interesting.
This is really close, because he hit DT and he hit Tezzeret. He doesn't have enough mana to play Tezzeret and Time Vault in the same turn. The funny thing is, Bob doesn't know this, but Tom doesn't have lethal next turn, and Tom's hand is not all that well equipped to stop Tezzeret. Bob could potentially go like Mox, Time Vault, go, untap Tezzeret, and win the game from that, especially if he can Demonic Tutor for like a Flusterstorm first. Tom, on the other hand, is going to Mental Misstep Soul Ring if he has an opportunity to. So this turned into a very interesting game.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty interesting. So he's got to put 2 back, and she'll probably be Opal and, well, depending on what he's put Tom on, like,
yeah,
he can't really
on whether he wants. It really depends on whether he wants to play around a second mental misstep. He's probably, yeah, like you said, I don't think he can play around Force of Will.
Yeah.
Let's see. How close is Tom to lethal? He can Jace back. He's drawing a land, so he can Jace back a Pyroblast, Mental Misstep, Flusterstorm, but I think he's blue mana short of finding the 4th spell, because just 3 spells doesn't quite do it, right? It does 13 or 14?
It does 13.
13. So he needs 4 spells. I don't see a way for him to get... He needs red, blue, blue to get that. And he's a little bit short unless his graveyard has something else that... No, because he can flashback 1 card. Yeah.
Yeah, looks like that's the case. That Strip Mine is just eating a hole in his battlefield.
So, were Bob to DT and cast Time Walk, he's a mana short, unfortunately, because he would have to keep Mox and Soul Ring, and then DT Time Walk, but then that means putting back Tezzeret Time Vault, shuffling them both away, then opening up for a Jace Brainstorm, which doesn't... I don't think that works. So this is actually a really tough play for Bob, because he has to figure out how he's going to win, and then figure out what he can do. Like, oh, someone's in the chat says Demonic Tutor for Tolarian Academy. That is very interesting. Do you have enough mana for Vault plus Tezzeret there? I don't think you do.
Well, he's got... If he goes...
No, given that he has to put 2 back, that's not quite enough. Bob's not quite at Demonic Tutor. Yawgmoth will either. His best plan might be to try to win next turn, to try to like put back Mox and Soul Ring and then cast Demonic Tutor, and then, or just cast Time Vault and then next turn try to win. It's like I said, it's very close. Bob's got a couple lines here. It depends. It basically depends whether he wants to bank on Tom killing him next turn, which is obviously you'd rather not, because Tom has 7 cards in his hand, and therefore Bob can't assume he's going to be alive. But looking at what's in play and what Tom's going to draw, I think Bob does live 1 more turn. Jace certainly doesn't at the very least.
Yeah, Jace is going to be off of out of play. What do you think about going for Yawgmoth's Will? Does that work? Because Bob has Lotus and then Mox Opal.
Yeah. Bob can put 2 cards back, DT for Yawgmoth's, and just hope to get another turn. The strip mine's actually kind of annoying too, because that just reduces your mana count a little bit.
Yeah. This is a tough spot for Bob. I don't know what else he's got in his deck to maybe give him more mana, or like besides the Academy, he's got like just 4 off of that, so he's going to be a bit short. So
well, you certainly can't play Tezzeret this turn. That doesn't end up getting you much. It looks like Bob's putting back Mox at the very least. That's highlighted. I still think Mox Soul Ring, cast Demonic Tutor, pass the turn is your best bet. The question is, what do you Demonic Tutor for? That's actually interesting as well. Yawgmoth's is one thing. You could get Tolarian Academy. You don't have enough mana to have Flusterstorm really protect you. So I think it's either like Yawgmoth's or Tolarian Academy. They're both pretty close together. So
yeah, I kind of like Tolarian Academy.
Tolarian Academy means that if you top deck, either way, if you top deck a card like Flusterstorm, then you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
So I think you're just playing to that.
Yeah.
I don't know what other counter magic this deck has. Yeah. So Bob did get Academy. Tom's going to draw one of the lands he put back with Brainstorm. Be 2 points short of killing, unless... Well, that's not entirely true. What Tom can do is he can crack fetch land to shuffle his top card, which he knows is bad, Jace back Brainstorm, and hope to hit 3 playable spells off Brainstorm, which is actually pretty tough to do. He'd have to hit, like, Blue Mox, but then he couldn't even put something on the stack. He'd have to hit, like, Blue Mox into Preordain, then he would have lethal, because he could then Mental Misstep. But, yeah, I think Tom's best bet. I don't think Tom's going to want to tap his blue mana. I think he's going to want to leave up Flusterstorm next turn and hope to win that way, which, funnily enough, actually wins Bob the game. Because the way Bob played, he doesn't lose to Flusterstorm. And he has enough mana to not get Spell Pierced either.
Tom would need to draw some sort of combination of Sapphire, Lotus, Time Walk.
Yes, if Tom drew his Lotus is in his graveyard, so he doesn't have a lot of fast mana left. I assume, he's got a couple Moxes, but
I assume it's just the Sapphire. So yeah, that's a tough spot.
Well, the Mentor decks, the Jeskai Mentor deck, usually does not play the. It sometimes plays the other Moxes. Does not guaranteed play them though. I usually do though. I would say he's probably got Emerald Jet in his deck, but they don't accomplish that much unless he draws 2 of them. And actually, even brainstorming into 2 Moxes doesn't do it. Tom then can't Mental Misstep anything or Flusterstorm or Spell Pierce anything. So I actually think Bob's going to win this because of Tom's misclick earlier, which Tom is not going to be pleased about. That is my assumption. We'll see. That's a little easier to predict than a given line of play. Let's just say that.
Yeah, he'll be a bit livid, I think.
Yeah, let's get the hoodie a little bit down there. All right, perfect.
There we go.
Between Dave combing his beard and
let's not have any of that. So it looks like Tom is
going for the Brainstorm win.
Case on Brainstorm. Yep. So
he's got outs here. I just don't. They're not. These not tons of outs.
It's gonna be an interesting 3 cards, and it looks like. Force, Volcanic Island.
Volcanic. What's the last card? It has. Yeah, that's not going to do it. So Tom's going to kill the Jace and then lose to Vault Tezzeret. Oh no, he's got Forcible. He found the Force. What am I saying? Yeah. So Bob now needs to re-top deck. So Tom did find the counterspell he needed. Bob needs to draw. Actually, Bob doesn't have very many draws either. Someone posted that the list that we're assuming he's basing his list off of has Pyroblasts, which actually get counted by Mental Misstep. So I think Tom is now back to the driver's seat here.
Yeah, that Force Will was a huge draw, and I think Now what Tom has to think about is which land does he want to strip mine?
I would assume it's the Underground Sea, but it's I don't know. It could actually could be Sea to the Sign Out if you're worried about cards like Tolarian Academy and Thoughtcast.
Yeah. I would be thinking either Seat or one of the cuddle lands, depending on what kind of card Bob tutored for. I would lean towards black, but I would, since Opal is can produce black mana also, so it kind of goes either way. It's a difficult choice.
And for sure, Bob is not surviving another turn here, so he needs to win this turn.
Yeah. Yeah, mental misstep. Wow.
Oh, close, but not quite going to be enough.
No, the Force of Will is going to beat all of that, so I'm sure Tom will be pretty happy that he ended up winning this game, and that mistake with tapping his mana earlier didn't come back to bite him.
Yeah, it looks like, assuming Tom Force of Will is either spell from Bob, which he has to, at the very least, Force of Will in the Tezzeret. I don't think he Force of Will's Time Vault, actually.
No.
Tom manages to put Force of Will in the stack, which will basically end the game. He gets to untap and go Preordain into Mental Misstep if he wants, or Preordain into Spell Pierce. He'd probably rather not. Well, I guess he pitched Spell Pierce, so he's shown Spell Pierce now. But either way, Tom does have the spell he needs to take it home.
Yeah. And it looks like we're going to game 2 after.
We had to check whether this was game 2 or game 1 still because it had taken so long.
No. I mean, it has taken a little while, more than any of the other games, except maybe one of the games that Rich played in round 1. But I don't suspect this game is going to last very much longer.
No.
Now, the only question is, does Bob try and mental misstep the Preordain to counter Tom's mental misstep?
Yeah. All right, so after a pretty long game 1, we see Tom with his best sideboard card right on top there, Stony Silence. One of the reasons I'm scared of playing the Thoughtcast deck. It looks like he's bringing Serenity also. I do like the card Serenity against Workshop decks, and I guess if your opponent's playing Mox Opal and Sea of the Synod, Serenity can't be that bad there either.
Yeah. He's going full on Armageddon.
Bob with Anger of the Gods. That's a thing. I mean, I guess if you, again, Mox Opal helps you cast these double red spells.
Yeah. Well, any other sweet cards in the sideboard that you can see? There are a bunch of artifacts. Looks like the Vampiric Tutor is going out. Some of the Thoughtcasts are going out. I don't know how much I like that. I kind of just like loading up on as many draw spells and counter spells as I can. Shaving maybe some of the artifacts. Maybe that's what he's doing.
Yeah, it looks like Mana Vault, and I love taking out Vampiric Tutor. If anyone has ever watched me play Vintage, I side up Vampiric Tutor at every opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
But
sometimes there are some decks where you want to keep that in just because what you're getting is going to be awesome. But yeah, Vampiric Tutor, it looks like Mana Vault went out, so some of the mental misstep targets, but I still like the Thoughtcast. Even if
one of the strategies I like with Bob's deck is just overloading Tom by just casting a bunch of Thoughtcast, especially since it can't get Mental Misstep. It can get Pyroblasted, but it's pretty hard to counter Thoughtcast at a mana advantage. It's usually very cheap.
Yeah, and maybe Bob felt like he was just boarding out too many artifacts to where it's going to be not that great a spell at 4 mana or 3 mana, and maybe he anticipates a bunch of artifact removal from Tom to where he will have a very clogged hand. But I don't think those are the games that you can end up winning that much, and so you just have to keep all the draw in.
Yeah.
So what do you think Tom is boarding out? It looks like a Monastery Mentor. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he took out one of the mentors, partially, I think, because he has cards like Stony Silence and Serenity that do such a good job of ending the game, or at least setting Bob back, that you don't need the finisher as much. And I assume he'd cut down on Lightning Bolt if he looked like he took at least one out. It's possible that Tom wants to leave Source Splashers in just to not lose to a Blightsteel, which makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to protect yourself from a Tinker target is not the worst, especially when your Jaces are baby Jaces and not Big Daddy Jaces.
Yeah.
All right. So
This is a turn one thoughtcast because Bob gets to go Mox Key land thoughtcast for 2 mana. Tom, unless he's force of willing something there, is gonna have to let that happen. Though Tom's hand is quite good too, just a million counterspells of Lotus and Brainstorm Preordain.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty good for Tom. I mean, that Preordain is going to find a second blue, and then ideally an island and a gush, and then it'll be doing pretty well. And this Thoughtcast, I mean, it is a draw
He
too.
built his own Night's Whisper.
Yeah, but all those Night's Whispers are better at this point. They're going to be 1 minute. Oh,
the combo: Blightsteel Colossus, Thirst for Knowledge.
Yes.
Well, Tom's just on mono counterspells here. If you're Tom, do you like casting turn one Preordain or just leaving mana up?
I like keeping mana up. I think the mana drain can get forced to or pitched to Force of Will if you want, or you could go drain off of Lotus and then Flusterstorm and then Force, but I don't think you need to have drain up on turn 2 since your hand has so many counters.
Yeah, I when I'm in this spot, this deck ends up in the spot a lot because it's got lots of Pyroblast, Flusterstorms, and Preordains. I lean into just going land to go, turn 2 casting Preordain, trying to hit a land drop, rather than just tapping out on turn 1. Well,
Yeah.
Tom drew the Mentor, which he could just run out here. Though, yeah, that's not too bad, but Tom wants to have more protection, I think, which makes sense.
Yeah, I would run out the Mentor on turn 2.
Oh, wow, Bob did not go for the Thirst for Knowledge. He was worried about the mana drain, I suppose, or something along those lines. Though you don't really put the Mentor decks on having that many mana drains either, so...
No, usually I would expect 0 to 1 mana drains. More on the 0 side, just because a lot of their other spells are going to be like.
Oh, Tom didn't want to signal the mana drains, so he's doing this in his first main phase. Though classic vintage plays though are to move to your second main phase before casting mana drain here.
Oh yes, especially when you've got cards in your deck like Yawgmoth's Will.
All right, so
it looks like the fighting have a little fluster of spells.
Whoa, I think Bob clicked through that unintentionally. There's no way he doesn't misstep there if he could. Like that was too fast, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have lost the fight too to Flusterstorm still, but that is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, there was certainly a misclick.
Yeah, I guess they're even on misclicks.
Yeah, tit for tat, right?
Tom's like kind of crushing this game now. Like Bob can mental misstep this Brainstorm, and I assume he is going to, but Tom just has Mentor with 3 counterspells in hand.
Yeah, I don't suspect that this game is going to go on for much longer unless Bob draws something like, let's see, Tom has got Bob covered with 3 counters. So, yeah, I don't think that Tom is actually going to end up letting Bob get out of this.
No,
because Bob's hand basically does nothing except for the misstep. So the misstep has to matter, and then Bob has to draw spells that matter. I mean, Time Walk's kind of like one, but it's a redraw. At this point, he just wants to wait so he can get more use out of his mana.
Yeah, Time Walk, I like saving the Time Walk, because that way if you draw like Thirst, you can go Time Walk, if it resolves, cast Thirst, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Bob's in a lot of trouble here. He's going to need to draw a sequence of very good cards, which can certainly happen. This is vintage. But...
well, he kind of got there for his first draw step, but Tom's just crushing it.
Yeah. I don't think that had Bob been able to play the misstep, it would have been all like materially different, just because Tom had the Flusterstorm. So subtract Flusterstorm from Tom's hand and mental misstep from Bob's hand, and that actually advantages Tom, because then he could cast Treasure Cruise for less mana.
Yeah. It's like 4-strain. Ooh, top, that's something.
Yeah, it's not terrible, but Tom's got to be feeling pretty good about his hand right now.
Oh yeah, and that makes those scalding turns turn into something useful. And his next,
Portents.
yes, Bob's next draws are going to be better because of that. But Tom still has him covered. He's got a dig through time to find another set of destruction spells, even if Bob manages to fight through Force Drain, Flusterstorm. So Bob's going to have to find something pretty good here.
Yeah, if he resolves the time walk, then he's got some options. And actually, as Chris points out, that he can start using the Voltaic Key time walk or Sensei's Dividing Top combo to you tap the top to draw a card, you untap it, you tap it to draw a card. You basically end up one card, which is nice. But I don't know. I don't know if time walk's going to resolve here.
We're both familiar with that little draw engine.
Oh yeah,
it's very robust. Oh, so Tom feels like not giving Bob an extra turn, so he's going to go ahead and use that Flusterstorm, which is for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, it looks like.
so Bob could pay, which I assume he's going to, and then Tom's going to Mana Drain after tapping Bob out, and then untap and presumably win the game with Treasure Cruise or Dig. Like, dig into Gush, because at this point, if Tom casts the Mana Drain, we'll have, again, 3 Monks and a Mentor in play, which means that at this point, 3 spells is actually lethal because he has 5 power already.
Yeah, that looks like it's going to be the case.
So Bob didn't actually pay for the time walk. He decided that was not worth it. Oh, it looks like it was for 4. So the Storm was 3, but the total Flusters was 4, which means Bob could have misstepped to pay, but he still would have ended up dead in that case. Tom's probably just going to cast Dig Through Time now.
Yeah. So he's got Force Drain, pitching, Treasure Cruise, and yeah. Not a good spot to be if you're Bob. Bob does have a few looks with that Sensei's top, so he can
It's
get a few cards.
It's unclear whether he gets another turn, though. Because Tom's going to have... All Tom needs is 3 spells, and then he wins the game.
Yeah, we'll see what the Dig Through Time yields. I mean, 7 cards plus your draw step is pretty unlikely to not find anything.
Yeah. Like, Tom really is looking for just like a Gush and a Cantrip, and then that's about it.
Yeah. So if you're Bob, what do you think you're hoping to find at the top of your library?
I guess like Time Vault plus Flusterstorm. That's or something along those lines. All right, well there's the Time Vault. That's a start. Time Vault I think is what you want to see. So if you then untap, draw Time Vault, cast Time Vault, and then just start digging with top to find like a Pyroblast or something. And that'll be Bob's best bet, though. I think the odds that Bob survives this turn are not very high. Bob is shuffling with his top. I guess he's looking for Pyroblast.
He shuffled the Time Vault away, and the Time Vault Thurston.
I think Bob's assuming that if he lets Dig resolve, he's just dead. So he's just going to look for a Pyroblast or maybe a Flusterstorm and going to try to counter the Dig. In which case, yeah. So it looks like he found Mana Drain, Negate, and Jason. Unfortunately, he's now 1 mana short of casting any of those spells, so Tom's going to get to resolve Dig here.
Yeah.
And again, Tom's just looking for cantrips. The thing is, or Moxes. The thing is, if Tom doesn't find those, he's probably finding counterspells or a card like Stony Silence, so it's going to be pretty tough for Tom to miss. Missing on Dig is unpleasant when it happens, but very difficult to do.
Yeah, it looks like Tom hit with Gush. Serenity isn't really the card that he wants. Ooh, Probe, that's good.
Well, the good thing about Serenity is it makes Bob take a bunch of damage off his mentor. So like that's basically it. It's
Yeah.
just an extra spell, which is all Tom really needs here.
It's a flame rift, sort of.
Yeah. Just fire blast you.
Mm. And there we go. Yeah.
There we have it.
Well, I was kind of hoping for more of a slugfest.
Yeah, game
Game
one
two.
was like that, but yeah, game two, Tom resolved a quick mentor and just countered everything that Bob did. Actually, didn't really have to counter almost anything. Bob did not come up with a ton of stuff. So that will do it. Tom Martell advances to 1-0, and I've got to get set up for my match. So I'm playing Randy Bueller. So we'll be back in a couple minutes as we've got our next round starting.
Good luck.